This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha. Today we've got another epic video, and I want to warn everyone out there that this video will tug at the heartstrings. So if you're triggered by emotional videos, this is one that you'll definitely want to listen all the way through to the end. And it's a long one, so we're going to jump right into it, and I'll just give my commentary as we go along. The title kind of says it all. Divorced my wife, got primary custody of my kids, then adopted her affair child. So let's get into it. My divorce and the events surrounding it happened around 16 years ago now, but the movie still plays in my mind periodically. As with most naive men, Ben, thought everything was great with the relationship I had with my wife, Claire, and our two beautiful children. We were in our 8th year of marriage at the time, and our kids were 5, that was Ben Jr., and 4, Cindy. And my wife was approaching her 7th month of pregnancy, carrying our daughter. I love our kids and was over the moon with excitement of having another little rugrat to chase around the house. Earlier that year, my wife had abruptly quit her job as a marketing director to fully dedicate herself to being a wife and mother. Up to that point, there were no issues with her work-life balance, and she was a great wife and mom, so the sudden change came as a surprise. More about this later. I am a trained biologist and work in a lab for a life sciences company. I earn good money and love what I do. To me, we had the best marriage and family I could not have been happier. Then one day after work, I was opening and discarding several days' worth of mail at the house. There was a letter from a legal firm addressed to my wife. At first I thought it was just another piece of junk mail that we get a lot of at the house. I was going to put it in a pile to shred, but decided to open it. In the envelope was a letter from an attorney representing the wife of a former co-worker. Oh no, not another co-worker situation. A co-worker of his wife. Let's see. She had filed for divorce, and according to the letter, she, the plaintiff, named my wife in the divorce and was also planning to bring a potential alienation of affection lawsuit against my wife. Ooh. I had never heard the term before, so I had to go online and look it up. I don't have to explain to you how I felt after reading the letter. My whole storybook marriage and life had been shattered into a million pieces. Now the cause of my wife quitting her job so abruptly earlier that year made logical sense. My wife was out shopping with our kids, and when they came home, I acted normal. We fixed dinner and had a normal evening. We required our kids to be in bed by 10:30 p.m. back then. My wife and I then would normally stay up until 11:30 or so on weekdays. After my kids went to sleep that night, my wife and I were sitting next to each other on the sofa, and I took her hand and said to come here with me. We walked into our office, which is just off the family room, and I closed the door, opened the drawer, and took out the letter and handed it to her. She proceeded to read the letter and immediately started crying, dropped the letter, and hugged me around the waist, burying her head deep into my chest. She was holding on for dear life and sobbing, saying how sorry she was. She was getting very loud, and I didn't want our kids to be disturbed, so I calmly told her to keep it down for that reason. I asked her to explain, but she wouldn't let go or stop crying, and I couldn't gently pry her away, so I just let her cry and hold on to me for what seemed like an hour, but was actually closer to about 15 minutes. I then asked her if she could release me as I couldn't breathe, and she eventually let go and backed away. She then just started talking, saying, "Ben, you got to forgive me. It was a one-time mistake that I will never make again. I'm so sorry for what I've done to you and our kids, and will spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I then asked her to explain what happened. She said on her final business trip for the company, she and the co-worker were stranded in Boston overnight due to a snowstorm, which was true. Many businesses there were shut down due to the storm, and the hotel where they were staying was nearly empty. They walked over to a bar that remained open and got dinner and had several drinks. Well, why is a woman, a married woman, having several drinks with a coworker? Completely unacceptable. Says that they were talking about the successful presentation they had just given and about their families. When they got back to the hotel, she invited him over to her room. Now, what is a married woman, again, inviting a man over to her room? She says, according to him, she wanted to give him a physical copy of the presentation to read through, as he didn't have one. She said she entered the room and he stood at the doorway holding open the door. She walked over and gave him the presentation. Then she said, out of the blue, he grabbed her and kissed her. She said she was stunned, but instead of resisting, which she could have easily done, she kissed him back and they retreated into the room, and unfortunately, you know what comes next. She said after the act, she immediately recognized the terrible thing she had done, and so did he. Isn't it amazing in all these situations? They don't recognize the terrible thing that they are about to do or in the process of doing. It's after, they complete the act and they've had all of their fun, then they say, oh, we're married. I shouldn't have done that. I got a great husband and great children at home, and now I regret doing everything. They swore to each other that it would never happen again, and they would keep it a secret as they both proclaimed their love for their spouses. Now, here's the thing, too. They're proclaiming their love for their spouses. So this is what they do to people they love. They cheat on them. They piss all over them. Now, what would they do to people they dislike or people that they hate? Man, I'd hate to see that. She said she then took a long bath and, listen to this now, used multiple cans of soda water in the minibar as a douche. And he says here, huh? Confirming to me they did not use protection. Now, I had to go out and find out what this was all about, so I did some research online, and apparently there was an old wives' tale from years and years ago that there was a thought that, hey, if you slipped up and you had unprotected sex as a woman, that you could use a carbonated beverage, one preferably with not sugar-based, like soda water or, something like that, and then you shake it up, and then you place that under your vagina and it blasts through, and there would clear out all of the sperm. Well, studies have shown douching, and especially doing something like that, definitely does not work. Sperm are very quick swimmers, so they're up in that cervix and up into the uterus very quickly, so any kind of douching you're going to do is not going to work. And there were many quotes online saying, ladies, do not do this, and this can be very dangerous, using this carbonated soda or carbonated beverage to do this type of thing. It can be very dangerous, and you also could get a urinary tract infection. So any women out there listening, pay no attention to that. That is all an old wives' tale. She said she was so destroyed mentally that she immediately decided to resign from the company and dedicate herself to being the best wife and mother she could be. She said she knows having S with another man and not disclosing this to me are both unforgivable acts, but begged me to just give her a chance, saying before and after this one-time indiscretion, our marriage has been fantastic. Well, just like on one of the recent videos I did, somebody gave a quote saying, that's almost like a bank robber saying, hey, judge, before I robbed this bank, I was a great citizen. And then guess what? After I robbed the bank, I've been a great citizen as well. It doesn't matter. It doesn't take away from the fact that you robbed the bank. And it's the same thing here. I then quickly realized the child she was carrying may not be mine. I told her I was not going to do anything rash immediately, but explained this is not something I can forgive or ever forget. I then told her I want a paternity test done on the unborn child. This sent her over the edge, and she fell to her knees sobbing, saying she was sure the baby she was carrying was definitely mine, as she only had the one encounter with her coworker, had douched multiple times, and had been with me nearly every night as we were trying for a third child. The final statement is true. So he's saying they were actively trying for a third child. But this woman is hung up on this douching thing. And I can't believe this woman, being a marketing director, so she's obviously got some intelligence, believe that that would actually work. My goodness. I told her the test must occur, as I would not take responsibility for the child until I was 100% sure it was mine. She eventually agreed and said she would do anything I asked her to do to stay married. I then told her we would keep this matter from our young children, but would need to tell our parents tomorrow so they know what's going on. She begged me not to make her do this, but I insisted, and she again said she will do whatever it takes to keep me. The next day we met with our parents, shuttling our kids between their houses to keep them away from the discussion. So what they did, it looks like, is they took the kids over to one set of parents, then went over to the other parents to tell them, then they went back, picked up the kids from the other parents, took them over to the parents they just told, and then went back to the other parents and then told them, so that the kids weren't part of any of these discussions or around these discussions. All four of them were visibly upset and sad. Throughout the discussion, my wife couldn't speak as she was crying, saying how sorry and remorseful she is for her actions, and she was going to do everything to save our marriage and our family. I said two things during the discussion with our parents that sent my wife over the edge with emotion. First, I said what she had done amounts to relationship treason to me and my kids, and for that reason I don't know if I can stay married to her. And that's a good way to classify cheating. It's relationship treason, and there's no rehabilitation for treason, as you know. And I've never heard it put that way, but that's a good way to put it. Second, I explained if it turns out the unborn child is not mine, she would be immediately moving in with her parents, and we would immediately divorce. I went on to explain I plan to meet with an attorney regardless of what we eventually decide. On Monday, I made my wife call her OBGYN with me at her side and ask her to order a prenatal paternity test. The doctor said this wasn't something that she had ever ordered for a patient, as the cost is normally not covered by insurance. She explained it can be costly and that they could just do a simple test after birth that would be less expensive and likely covered by insurance. My wife explained to her that both she and I wanted the test, and the doctor placed the order without inquiring further. Well, I would really question that OBGYN that she's never ordered a prenatal paternity test. That sounds a little off, but nevertheless. The earliest we could get in was on Friday. That week my wife was a mental mess, and to be honest, so was I. We were still sleeping in the same bed, no intimacy though, but I did hold her to sleep every night, and she was attached to me from the time I came home until we went to bed. She was so over the top, my kids kept asking us why mommy was hugging me all the time. So even though this guy knows that she cheated on him and lied to him for all these months, he's still hugging her out, sleeping in the same bed with her and treating her, very well. On Wednesday, my wife had a call with the law firm representing her coworker's wife in their divorce. The attorney requested that she come in voluntarily to have a discussion with them about the affair, and that this would be considered favorably by the plaintiff. My wife explained it was just the one time and didn't want to meet with them. When she ended the call, she asked me what she should do, and I told her this was not my problem and to consult an attorney. So he's starting to pull away a little bit there from her. She asked if she could use the attorney I met with and selected yesterday, and I told her she couldn't because the firm was representing me. She then asked if I would accompany her to meetings with the potential attorneys and to a meeting with the plaintiff's attorneys, and I told her I definitely would not. She cried and retreated to the bedroom. So he's saying, hey, this is all on you. You created this mess, now you've got to deal with it. The following Thursday, we got the results of the prenatal paternity test back. A notice was sent electronically to my inbox with a link to their site where I had already set up an account in preparation. My wife and I nervously sat down in front of the computer as I opened it. We were both nervous wrecks, and she was crying, and tears also spilled down my cheeks. We opened the link, and it took a minute or so to read down to where the results were, and we all know what the results were. The child she was carrying was not mine. Ugh, what a gut punch. My wife turned and threw herself on the bed crying, and I ran down the steps, grabbed my keys and phone, and just took off in my car. Our kids were at her parents' as we were expecting the results of the test and didn't want them to be witness to our potential responses. About 15 minutes later, my wife called crying and asked where I was, and I told her I just needed to be alone and would return in a few hours. She asked if I could come back now, as she is really losing it and having a breakdown, and I told her no. Just relax and we'll talk when I get back. I then called both of our parents and let them know the terrible news. I broke down on both calls telling them about this. They were very sad and asked next what I was going to do. I told them that, like I explained before, I'm going to ask Claire to move back home to her parents temporarily, as I don't want our children impacted by this drama. I will then take steps to expedite the divorce process and will also have my attorney file a legal challenge to the assumed paternity based on the paternity marriage laws in my state. My attorney had previously suggested this as a possible action so that I do not get defaulted on the birth certificate. Now, that's very important advice out there for all the men who are contemplating getting married or are already in a marriage. You really need to familiarize yourself with your state's paternity laws, because there's some states out there that if you're married to a woman and she has a child, regardless if you're the biological father of that child or not, you are automatically defaulted as being the responsible father. And you have to take legal action, mount a legal challenge to potentially get removed from a birth certificate, and you're at the mercy of the judge. So you better, if you're out there, you're married or you're about to get married, always check the laws of your state of how they handle paternity. I told them with this terrible news, the cheating and the lying, there was no way I could ever remain in a relationship with her. I then told them not to call Claire or discuss this with her if she happens to call them until I had a chance to talk to her this evening. They agreed. My next call was to my attorney, where I gave the green light to move forward with the divorce and the challenge of paternity. I went home and it was now 9:30 p.m., a full 6 hours after we learned of the results. My wife greeted me at the door and hugged me crying. I waddled with her still clutching me over to the sofa where we sat down. I explained that she would be temporarily moving in with her parents until after the birth of her child, and that I would be filing for divorce and selling the family home. Oof. She just cried and said, no, 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 please. I told her this was necessary as I didn't want our kids to be witness to the drama that would exist between us if we were living together. She promised there would be no drama, but I insisted. She then said something which haunts me to this day. She said, I will have and he has here in parentheses, a term procedure, basically the A word, the dreaded A word, as I don't want this child if it means losing you. He says, I took her hands and I told her to look at me and listen to what I was about to say to her. I told her the baby she was carrying was an innocent angel who didn't ask to be part of the mess her birth parents created. I said the baby deserves to be born and to have a chance to live a beautiful life. My wife then quickly backtracked and said she could never term, but would put the child up for adoption if that meant she could keep me. So she's really just grasping at straws here and not thinking straight. I told her she really needs to discuss this with the baby's father, but told her that while I think adoption is beautiful in the right situation, that this is something she would end up regretting the rest of her life, and this would not save our marriage. So this man, again, is a very good man. Even though he's been totally disrespected and trounced all over by this woman, he is doing the right thing by explaining to her what is in the best interest of the baby and also what is in her best interest. And like he said here, really the best thing for her to do at this stage, have the baby, raise the baby, consult with that baby's father as to what she wants to do in terms of, whether to keep the baby or put the baby up for adoption. But he's recommending have the baby, raise the baby, keep the baby, because if you don't, you're going to regret it. My wife said she was never going to speak with the baby's bio father again, and that the only man whose opinion she cares about is mine. She said she will have the baby, raise it, and not ask that I support or interact with the child unless I want to. While I was very sad and depressed about the whole thing, I was relieved that the innocent child's future was somewhat secured. We spent the rest of the night lying in bed holding each other with my wife crying. So even though now he knows not only did she cheat on him and lie to him for all these months, now she's pregnant with another man's baby, he's still in bed with her and holding her all night, not having intimacy, but he's still consoling her and being there for her. In the morning, I told her it was time, and we both showered, got dressed, got breakfast, and she packed her suitcase while crying. She asked me if there was any way I would consider letting her stay at the house, and I just said no, she must do this for our kids. Now, a point here I want to make mention of. Legally she could challenge this because he can't just make her leave. She's leaving, he wants her to leave, and she's leaving voluntarily. But if she wanted to mount a challenge, he could just not, make her get out of the home legally. So she's not pushing him there because, she wants to do everything to stay in his good graces. But I just wanted to bring that up as a point. We had a final discussion where I explained to her that I would not be with her for the birth, nor would I have any role in the child's life from a parental standpoint, but would treat the child warmly when she was older, as she would be a sister to my children. During the child's infant and toddler years, I would not be interacting with her, as I thought this would be best emotionally for all of us. Now, I'm sure the reason why he's doing this is he wants to move forward with the divorce and not be the father for this child. And he knows that if he would start interacting with this little baby, in its very young years, he would become attached to it, and the chances for him to break away and actually move forward with the divorce would be in jeopardy. So he's saying, hey, I don't want to have any interactions with the child while she's an infant and a toddler. But when she gets older, I will interact with her warmly because she is the sibling, and she will be the sibling for my children. I dropped her off at her parents and picked up my kids. I explained to them that mommy will be staying with grandma and grandpa until she has the baby, as she needs rest, but they will visit her often. They were fine with this. They kissed their mom and grandparents, and we went home. My wife called and messaged me daily, but I would only respond to messages pertaining to our kids. She fell into a deep, dark depression, and her parents were worried that she was going to lose the baby as she wasn't eating or getting the appropriate rest. They asked for my help. I decided to take her out for a walk in a park we both love and talk to her. I told her that I wanted her to take care of herself and the baby, and that I needed her to be strong for our children and for her new baby. She said she just can't do anything except think of me and how she ruined everything, and that she just wants to crawl into a dark closet and never come out. I told her that while she has destroyed our relationship and our marriage, that she still is a great person whose kids need her to be strong and happy. I told her she should focus all of her energy on her health and the health of her new baby and be the best mother she can be. We hugged it out for more than an hour. So here he is again. He's hugging it out with this woman, his wife, and she promised she would do this for me. The following day, she had a meeting with the attorneys who were representing her lover's wife. She met with them and had her mother and an attorney with her. She texted me and said that while the meeting was very difficult, she was glad it happened. She went on to say the plaintiff agreed to drop the alienation suit in exchange for a sworn affidavit of her admitting to the details of the affair and her pregnancy, which he says here they didn't know about until the meeting. Needless to say, they were pleased learning this. So, of course, the attorneys are saying, oh, this is a slam dunk now because your cheating husband, this cheating husband got his AP knocked up. My wife gave birth to a healthy baby girl and named her Sophie. Not her real name, but a similar sounding name. Flash forward 5 months and our divorce was finalized. My wife didn't want anything, no alimony, no assets, nothing. She thought giving up everything would further demonstrate to me how much she loved me and that she may get me back. I insisted we split our assets 50-50 and that she get alimony per the norm, but requested she give me primary custody, 60% plus of our kids. She agreed with the stipulation that I would not move more than 35 miles from our current city. I was fine with this as I have no plans to live anywhere else. The adjustment for our kids was quite easy. However, they didn't understand why I wasn't Sophie's father and why I never see or hold her. They both said I would just love her as she is so little and cute. I have to be honest, hearing this broke my heart. I had to explain to them that Sophie has another daddy who lives far away. Now imagine having to explain that to your kids. Ugh. Woman, what did you do here? Geez, you messed up a terrific thing you had. By the way, my wife's lover's divorce was finalized a month after ours. He has since moved to Dallas for a job, and his wife and 9-year-old daughter moved back to Seattle, where she is from. She took him to the cleaners financially. Also, he never once reached out to my ex-wife to inquire about his child, though he is fully aware she exists. This guy is really a piece of garbage, as I could never do such a thing. Well, yeah, he's a piece of garbage because he never, is not part of his child's life, his new baby's life, and his 9-year-old daughter is now living across the country, so he's probably not even going to see her that much. This guy is a real piece of work and a piece of trash, like you said. Fast forward about 3.5 years, and the sting of my divorce and betrayal is mostly behind me. My kids were doing great and have adjusted well. My ex-wife, on the other hand, has struggled terribly. Initially, she was not bonding with Sophie. Ooh. And her parents had to step in and help raise the child during the first year of her life. During this time, she also started withdrawing from our kids and fell back into the dark depths of her mind as a result of the destruction of our marriage. So she's really struggling, or did really struggle. Going to therapy 3 times a week for 2 years and taking several medications helped her rebound. And after 2 years, she was back to near normal and is back to being a great mom to her 3 kids. Throughout this time, she and I only communicated through email about our kids, but she would send me 2 to 3 emails emails 2 to 3 times per week, saying how much she loved me, how sorry she was, and that she would do anything to have me back. She has offered me an FWB relationship many times, meaning friends with benefits. So what she's saying to him is, hey, I'll do anything just to have you back in my life. You can even just, we can just get in a friends with benefits relationship. No strings attached. He says here again, offering me anything I wanted to get back into an intimate relationship with her. So she's desperate to get him back. Isn't that amazing? She cheats on him. He finds out, and now she's just desperate to get him back because she knows this is a great man and that you really effed up. I never responded to any of the messages and never discussed the contents. In one of the few brief face-to-face conversations we had during this period, I did, however, let her know that I did receive all of her messages and have read every one of them. Her mom told me that in her mind, she still feels that she is married to me, and these messages are a way for her to keep that connection, which has helped her get through with her depression. One day in early summer, I planned to pick up my kids on Wednesday and take them to the zoo for a special event the special event that the zoo was having. This was on a day when they were with their mom, but we were both flexible with custody time. I went to the house to pick them up, and they ran outside and got into the car and buckled up. Now here's where it starts to get a little emotional. I was pulling out of the driveway when my daughter yelled, "Dad, there's Sophie." I looked up and saw this cute little girl with blonde curly hair standing at the edge of the driveway, waving to us with one hand and drying her tears with another. My son, said, "She's crying, Dad, because she wants to go with us." I stopped the car and told my kids to wait here and I will go talk to Sophie. I knelt down and asked her name, and she said it was Sophie. I told her my name was Ben and asked why she was crying. She looked at me sucking her thumb and said she wants to go with me to the zoo. I said, "You do?" And she said yes. I then asked if I could pick her up to talk to her, and she said yes. I then asked if she could show me her pretty smile, and she smiled a big smile with those perfect baby teeth, which melted my heart. I said, "Let's go ask Mommy if you can go with us." Now keep in mind, up to this point, I had never seen Sophie before other than a couple of pictures of her being held by my kids just after she was born. And as previously mentioned, I only had a few brief face-to-face conversations with my wife since our divorce. I knocked hard on the door and heard footsteps scurrying. My ex-wife answered and said, "Oh my God, Sophie, Ben." And she broke down crying. I said, "Claire, Sophie wants to go to the zoo with us and I'd like to take her." She asked, "Are you sure?" And I said, "Yes." I then asked Sophie if she would promise to be a good girl, and she nodded yes. Claire wanted to change her clothes, but I told her she looks great and to just get her some good walking shoes and a jacket. We then walked out to the car, and Claire installed her car seat in the back and sat Sophie in it, all the while crying happy tears. Claire then waved us off, crying as we backed out of the driveway, and my son then said, "Dad, this made Mom very happy." My kids were so excited to have Sophie with us. My daughter said, "Sophie is a good girl, Dad. She won't be any trouble. I'll watch her." My son followed up by saying, "Dad, you're really going to like her. She's nice." I looked back at Sophie in my rearview mirror and said, "I like her already." And she gave me another big smile. We had a great day at the zoo. The plan was to stay for 2 hours, but we ended up staying for nearly 5 hours and ate a pizza dinner there. Sophie was afraid of the animals, so I carried her the entire time, which I didn't mind. At the end of the day, she was so exhausted she fell asleep in my arms for the final half hour of our visit, then slept all the way home in her car seat. I fell in love with Sophie that day, something I never imagined doing. I suddenly didn't see her as an affair baby, but as a sibling to my kids and a little girl who needed a father, and frankly, saw me as a dad who wanted another daughter. The next day, I sent an email to my ex-wife stating, I'd like for Sophie to be able to spend time with our kids while they were with me, and wanted to see if she would be open to entering into a legal agreement which would enable this without any obligation to me from a paternity standpoint. So he wants to be able to take Sophie with him when he has his kids so that she doesn't feel left out, but he also doesn't want to have his wife to be able to use this to get him to, be the responsible father. Claire was thrilled and said we didn't need a legal agreement and that I could take Sophie whenever I wanted. Even though she said this, I still had my attorney draw up an agreement, and Claire, she quickly signed it. Now Ben Jr., Cindy, and Sophie were spending Friday through Monday with me, because remember, he's got primary custody, and Tuesday through Thursday with Claire. Sophie grew very attached to me, and I quickly grew very attached to her. She would always make a point to sit by me when we would watch TV or eat at the table. Ben Jr. started calling her my shadow, as she was always following me and would often choose to stay back with me while her sister and brother went out to play. Then about a year later, on a Tuesday afternoon, something occurred that was so emotional for me, I knew I had to adopt her. She was now in preschool and had painted a picture for me to hang on my wall. She was so excited about giving it to me that she had her grandpa call me from his phone to talk to me. She told me about the picture, and I told her I can't wait to see it on Friday when I pick her up. About a half hour later, I heard a light knock on my front screen door, while I was working in my home office. I got up and walked out to the door, and there was Sophie at my door holding up the picture. I went to the door and let her in and looked around and asked, "Who brought you here, Sophie?" She said, "I runned over here to give you this picture. I know how to cross the street now. Grandma and Grandpa showed me." She knew the route to my house and just decided to run or walk the nearly 3/4 of a mile, crossing a busy 6-lane boulevard just to give me the picture. I immediately teared up and gave her a big hug. I then called my ex-father-in-law and told him not to panic, but Sophie was at my house. He was horrified hearing this, as she was in her room playing while he and my ex-mother-in-law were just out back planting a shrub and doing some mulching. My ex-wife was out grocery shopping at the time, so Sophie apparently just snuck away just to bring me that picture. I told my ex-father-in-law I would keep her here with me for a while and bring her back later. I then took Sophie out to a frame shop and had the picture mounted and framed. She was so excited when I told her that when I get the picture back, I'll be hanging it on my dining room wall. Next, we stopped for some dinner at a favorite restaurant of hers that specializes in chicken fingers. During the dinner, I gently explained to her to not run away again and to always let Mommy and her grandparents know where she is at all times when they are watching her, and to let me know if she wants to come and visit me. She said, "Okay, I will." I said, "Do you promise?" And she said, "Yes." That evening, when I brought her back, I came into the house and told Claire I wanted to speak with her about an idea I have. I then asked Claire to come with me and took a car ride with her to our favorite park bench, and there I told her I would like to explore adopting Sophie. She was, of course, overjoyed hearing this and hugged me, showing me her approval. We hugged it out again for a good hour on the bench. Here's this guy again hugging his wife. I mean, he really He loves this woman deep down, you can tell. And she said, "You don't know how I've hoped and prayed you would be her father." The next day I met with my attorney who started the process. We didn't need to engage the bio father, as in our state a child is considered to be abandoned if a parent has not been part of the child's life for a period of time. I believe it's 12 months. 1 year later, at the age of 6 years, Sophie officially became my daughter. The adoption happened 10 years ago, and it was one of the best decisions of my life. I now have 3 great kids, and I love them all equally, something I didn't think was possible. So he's saying, hey, I adopted Sophie, she's my daughter now, and I love all 3 of them the same. I am also remarried now and madly in love with a wonderful woman. We have our first child on the way, due in 4 months. Yes, he says here, that is number 4. My dream was always to have 5 kids, so I'm well on my way, but I'm 52 now, so I've got to hurry, he says. My ex-wife Claire and I maintain a very friendly relationship, even though our 2 oldest are well into their college years now, and little Sophie is now 16 years old, believe it or not, he says. For years, Claire held out hope that I would one day come back to her, especially after I adopted Sophie, but that never happened. Lord knows I thought about it 1,000 times or more during this period and was very close to doing so. However, while I'll always have a deep love for Claire, I could never get past what she did to me and my 3 kids. Claire is still single today and has not dated anyone since our divorce. She works a little job at a museum and lives humbly. She tells everyone that she has no interest in ever remarrying, as she once had the best husband and anyone else would never be able to measure up. She's fully dedicated her life to her 3 kids. While it's nice hearing this compliment, I do wish she would find someone to make her happy, as she's a good woman, in spite of the terrible things she did nearly 17 years ago now. Believe it or not, I too hadn't dated anyone until I met my new wife 6 years ago. To be honest, I too thought I'd be able to reconcile with Claire at some point. After things started getting serious with my then girlfriend, I met with Claire to let her know. It was a very emotional conversation for both of us, but she understood and gave me her blessing. So this guy is still, even when he met this new woman who became his wife, he still went back to his ex-wife to explain it to her. Now, this is what a stand-up kind of guy this guy is, because most men would say, hey, screw you, lady. I mean, you did me dirty before. You cheated on me. You had a baby with somebody else. I don't owe you anything. But this guy is such a stand-up guy that he actually went, met with his wife, and explained, hey, I've got a new woman in my life. And she gave him her blessing. To this day, I often find myself thinking about Claire and how one terrible decision she made upended her life, the lives of me and my kids, and the lives of her lover's wife and child. Yeah, remember, they were upended by what she did as well. The whole thing still gets to me, but then I think, hey, you can't change the past, and things have worked out pretty well for all of us, all things considered. And he says, life goes on, and that's my story. So that's his story, and I think it was a fantastic story. Now, some men may look at this and say, man, he was weak. This guy ended up adopting his wife's affair baby. And I say to that, no, he was strong. And the reason why he was strong is because he did that voluntarily. It wasn't a situation where he was duped through paternity fraud, although he almost was. And it wasn't a situation where legally he was responsible for that child because he challenged that before and got out of that. But he voluntarily adopted that little girl. And I have no problem with someone doing that. He's not doing it under duress. He did it because he loves the girl and wanted her to be his daughter. He never took his cheating wife back. And you can see that his cheating wife has just lived what I think is a very miserable life. I mean, look at that. She had everything going for her. She had 2 beautiful kids. She had a great husband. She had a great job. And then for what? She threw it all away for one act that basically destroyed and upended her whole life. So there's a lesson there, folks. You know, women and men, when you've got a good partner, hold on to them. Don't do anything that's going to, upend your life. And don't destroy your life and your family for something stupid like this. A great story, and hopefully you enjoyed it. And now I'd like to hear from you. How do you think Ben handled this situation? Would you have handled it differently? Have you ever heard of a situation like this, or have you encountered a situation like this? We'd like to hear from you in the comments and hear your feedback. If there's any women out there listening too, let me know your feedback. Love hearing from you. And if you like this video, please like it, because that moves it up on the algorithm and gets the views up. Share it with your friends, and please subscribe to this great channel, and I will talk to you on the next one.